Just in case you haven't been paying attention, Ted Cruz is a very, very conservative guy. How conservative? Well, the New York Times starts out a piece by quoting John McCain as calling him a wacko bird, and then proceeds to list his very conservative positions. By the way, the senator from Texas hasn't exactly hidden the fact that he is what he calls a constitutional conservative, a consistent conservative. The whole basis of his argument against Donald Trump right now, beside the battle over delegates, has to do with the fact that he says that Trump, consistently has supported liberal democratic causes for 40 years because Trump was not always, by his own admission, all that conservative. So this New York Times piece is fascinating and talks about how Cruz is to the right of Ronald Reagan on immigration policy, because Reagan teamed up with the Democrats in 1986, of course, with a big liberalization compromise. The whole GOP just about is to the right of Reagan these days on immigration. Then there is Cruz opposing abortion, even in the case of rape and incest. Cruz supporting an amendment that would allow states to decide whether they wanted to perform or even recognize same-sex marriage. Cruz favors the gold standards. The New York Times tells us he wants to abolish the IRS, fill out your taxes on a postcard. He criticized Trump on deportation policy from the right. Wow. And then, just in case you missed the point, the New York Times tells us that Cruz would be the most conservative presidential nominee in half a century, maybe even to the right, perhaps even to the right of Barry Goldwater. So the underlying argument here is that Cruz is just too conservative to win. Now, this is one of the reasons that some mainstream Republicans think that Cruz would be a terrible nominee. They think that he may be, that the positions that he takes may well appeal to conservative Republicans in the primaries when he's got to fight Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. In a whole general election battle, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Now, that's a good debate to have about the issues, but it does seem there's just an underlying tone in this piece that says we, the New York Times, think that Cruz is too conservative to win. Now, the whole other debate about Cruz has to do with that Time magazine cover headline, is he likable enough? And certainly, Cruz has alienated many members of the GOP establishment with his sort of tough guy, no compromise approach involving that government shutdown and other issues in 2013. But it is true that if we get to a fall election, the Democrats and Hillary are going to try to paint this guy as completely out of the mainstream. So it's an important debate to have, and it maybe takes us away a little bit from the squabbling over delegates and the personality issue. Now, Cruz's advisors believe that Cruz is making progress at seeming more approachable, more likable, softening his media image. He appeared with on CNN with his young daughters. He sent Heidi out as a surrogate. He's been using more humor. He was on with Jimmy Fallon. Fallon was playing Trump with the wig, and Cruz went along with that joke. But it does seem to me, if you're going to do this long, detailed piece about Cruz and how conservative he is, there ought to be some context about the way the rest of the Republican Party has moved and where Donald Trump is, which is that he has a mixture of very conservative positions and some more moderate and even Democratic positions, for example, protecting entitlements. So this is a good debate to have, but I do think we ought to look at the whole picture and not just try to marginalize Ted Cruz as if he's completely out of step with his party.